Real USA. We welcome you from the city of New York. Thank you for tuning in and appreciating the stories of the United States through the unique Telesur lens. I'm Karina Cartagena. Energy independence or environmental destruction. What exactly is fracking? The topic has turned into one of the most heated debates in the United States, since fracking has opened up oil and natural gas reserves to private energy companies. All local communities are under threat. Mary McCarthy offers us this report.
Jenny Markarian is a working mother with 2 children, and she was one of the leaders behind a citizen push for a 5-year moratorium on fracking in the Denver suburb of Broomfield.
This victory feels amazing. So many people in Broomfield came together and worked so hard and gave up so much of their time to make this possible. And for now, we are reveling in this victory.
It's a victory they just barely won. In Broomfield, the fracking ban passed by just 20 votes.
We learned that there were going to be several fracked wells very close to where we live and very close to the school that's in our neighborhood where my children attend personally. So this was something that would really affect our community, our way of life, our property values, and our health.
Broomfield is one of 6 cities in this picturesque spot north of Denver that have now passed bans on fracking. Wells like this are drilled, then fluid is injected into them to break apart or fracture underground rock and release oil or natural gas. Opponents say the fluid contains chemicals that are toxic to humans, and that the drilling and injection process dramatically increases carbon emissions in the area. One reason the fracking debate is so heated is that the science for now is inconclusive. Some scientific studies support the activists' claims that fracking does contaminate groundwater and raise overall pollution levels. But other serious studies say the effects on the environment and public health are negligible. Industry representatives in Colorado say that fracking doesn't pose any greater risks than traditional forms of drilling.
The word fracking is really a synonym for oil and gas development, and so we have to be sensitive that people are concerned about an industrial process coming into their community.
Tisha Schuler says she fully understands why residents are concerned, but at the same time, her organization is suing to overturn the fracking bans. She says that it's the responsibility of the state and not citizens to regulate natural resources.
It's blatantly irresponsible. We all use oil and gas. It's the cornerstone for our economy, the cornerstone for our way of life, and it's really key to how we get to work, keep our houses warm, do all of our work and all of our electronics. Everything we do has oil and gas as its foundation. So the idea that I want all of this as part of my way of life, but I want someone else to produce the energy required, this is just something that's not tenable.
Meanwhile, the citizen pushback against fracking is not going away, and activists from across the U.S. are turning to Colorado for inspiration on how to launch anti-fracking initiatives.
Definitely felt a national interest. I think that Broomfield is a swing county, and I think it could have went either way, and a lot of people were watching what's going on here in Colorado.
Across the U.S., an estimated 400 cities have passed bans on fracking, and France has banned it entirely over concerns that it causes environmental damage. Mary McCarthy for Telesur, Denver.
Denton could be possibly turned into the first city of Texas to prohibit the entry of the controversial fracking process. A campaign led by representatives of local civil society have temporarily impeded new fracking sites. Residents have expressed their concerns with regards to the consequences of oil and gas extraction, particularly to how fracking will affect their health.
They're not much to look at. Small plots of land with compact pieces of machinery. But campaigners say these small fracking sites are creating disproportionately large problems.
The health impacts are just too severe to feel safe in your own property.
In the Texas city of Denton, though, size can be deceptive. After all, this is the place where a small community has beaten the odds and fought off big industry.
It seems to be an industry that has more rights than a human being does or a family does.
Adam Briggle and Kathy McMullen have spent months fighting to make their city frack-free. They've convinced the city council to put a temporary ban on any new fracking sites, but that hasn't been easy.
On a scale of 1 to 10, the help we've received from the city is probably a -5. They have fought us every step of the way, put out fear campaigns, like, oh, the city's going to be sued and it's a $6 million lawsuit.
Wells have been springing up around the city. There are now around 275. This is one of the newest and largest, but many are near housing developments. It's the proximity of sites like these to residential homes that's causing the real concern for people living in the area. As you can see at this location, just south of the city, there's just a road separating the fracking site from the houses just across the street. Campaigners say because of the wells, the city has the worst air quality and highest asthma rates in the state. They also report cases of constant headaches, sinus problems, nosebleeds, and breathing difficulties near sites.
The biggest concerns are health and safety issues. The proximity of these fracking sites is much too close to places where kids and families are. So we're talking about toxic chemicals that are released, including benzene and many others. But there's also property rights concerns where people aren't able to enjoy their own homes because these industries are allowed to set up so close.
Fracking, or hydraulic fracturing, is the process of blasting water, sand and chemicals into underground minerals to release oil and gas. The problem is the city of Denton sits on top of the Barnett Shale, perhaps the largest natural gas reserve in the country. And that means huge financial possibilities for drilling companies. The main one in Denton, Eagle Ridge Energy, has defended the fracking process, saying there is no question that wells can be drilled and fracked safely.
The industry is so powerful, especially in Texas, that they're able to throw their weight around and get what they want.
Fighting a multi-billion-dollar industry is not easy. Recent estimates put the annual revenues from fracking in the US at around $76 billion. The industry also gives significant financial support to political campaigns to help persuade lawmakers fracking is safe. Between 1990 and 2011, it's estimated oil and gas companies donated around $965 million. Some of the largest sums went to politicians in Texas. For Denton to have fought this industry and won is a significant achievement.
I do think it's important that the people who are surrounded by these industrial activities are the ones who have the say about whether or not it should be happening. So we're really in support of local self-determination.
And momentum seems to be building. The Denton Drilling Awareness Group has already been asked by other states to help them with their own anti-fracking campaigns.
There are some small towns that really have no voice. And so they're looking to us. If you can do it, then can you show us how to do it?
The temporary ban on new fracking sites runs until September, when the campaign group hopes the council will pass a permanent ban or let voters decide the issue at the polls. Nick Harper for Telesur, Denton, Texas.
Real incomes versus the high cost of housing is a reality yet to be properly addressed by the government of the United States. Maria Juliana Bay traveled to San Francisco to meet the homeless youth who more often than not end up sleeping rough.
Each year, approximately 3.5 million people experience homelessness in the United States. In San Francisco alone, an estimated 5,700 young people are homeless. And a disproportionate amount, nearly 30%, are gay, lesbian, transgender, or bisexual.
That we have a shrinking middle class. We have a few people who become millionaires, and that's always the promise that's held out for everyone. But we have many more people in the middle class who are sinking into poverty, and many of those people are becoming homeless. So we have an ongoing problem with homelessness here because of that mismatch between people's incomes and the cost of housing. The rise of so many youth who are homeless is a very frightening and startling trend. And I don't think most people recognize how many homeless people are under 24.
LGBTQ youth are overrepresented in the homeless population. Young people who come out to their parents or to their communities or at school as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, or questioning, oftentimes get ostracized. For a long time, had about 30% of the population that we serve identify as LGBTQ.
A lot of times they get kicked out or they get abused, and so they run away or they get abandoned, in that way. And I think sometimes youth find San Francisco as a very attractive kind of hub, But it's not that easy to be in a city like, as big as San Francisco. The reality hits that, basically they need to find resources if they want to survive. So it becomes about survival at that point. A teenager, right, or a young adult, you're also dealing with the reality of life, so without any help or support from what you would usually expect.
My name is Audemars Casahun. I'm 20 years old, and I became homeless about a year and a half ago. I think the most impactful part of being homeless is the long-term effects, is being homeless in a bad environment, being homeless in a bad neighborhood, in a city where there's a lot of crime, a city where people are very vulnerable. I think that is what the negatives would be about homelessness. People have to be careful.
There are many, 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 many reasons why folks end up homeless, and it really is a set of circumstances beyond their control often that has landed them in that circumstance, and what they really need is help and opportunity and safety and practical supports, and then they, like all of us, can absolutely thrive.
This is Maria Juliana Bick for Telesur in the United States.
Low incomes, the high cost of living, a continuing economic crisis, and the lack of public policies together paint the current social economic panorama of the United States. As the result, hundreds of people have turned into the creation and construction of their own cities. Nonetheless, local authorities have been quick to condemn the trend as illegal.
This is the main avenue of Tent City. Located on public land in Lakewood, New Jersey, Tent City was born in 2005. Its founders were homeless people who, in search of a home, decided to build their own town with scraps of plastic and wood. Today, however, their space is threatened by imminent destruction. Local authorities claim the site is illegal and have offered the community a year of free housing in return for Tent City's destruction. But for people like Bill, one of the founders of Tent City, the proposal is not a long-term solution.
Set you up 1 year, give you money for the rent. I ain't heard nothing about food or anything, just for the rent. So now they're going with a buyout. In other words, they give you so much money, which is crazy. But a few people took it, and they're back here.
Tent City, with its 150 inhabitants, has in place its own system of organisation. The residents have their own letterboxes, as well as a chapel here. They feel safe and enjoy a sense of belonging and community, something temporary public housing does not offer.
You've got to take all your belongings in hand and wander the streets of the city that you're in until it's 5 o'clock and time to come back, and hopefully there's a spot for you. So it's a very cold system. It addresses the physical needs, of food and shelter, and usually clothing, but it doesn't address those emotional needs that we all have.
The lack of affordable housing is the main reason why thousands of people in the United States end up sleeping on the streets. According to government statistics, every night some 600,000 people in this country have nowhere to sleep. This is why places like Tent City offer an alternative for the most poor. The residents of Tent City claim their only sin is that they are poor.
Lakewood has declared a war against the homeless. If they see you sleeping underneath an umbrella, they arrest you and take you to court.
Over the past decade, extreme poverty in the United States has grown by at least 1/3, a figure never before seen in this country. Andrea Arenas, Telesur, Lakewood, New Jersey.
In Silicon Valley, California, it is increasingly difficult to find affordable housing. Following the surge of the technology industry and its new millionaires, residents of Silicon Valley have witnessed how rents have increased by 10% in the last year.
Giovanni Munguia Brown lives in an apartment in East Palo Alto with her husband and 3 children. She works as a preschool teacher at the prestigious Stanford University. She's also active in 3 advocacy groups fighting to protect the rights of Woodland Park tenants.
I live in a community that's very rare, where people are willing to help one another without question or reservation, as well as people actually walk by you and say hi. You know, so I think, you know, where I live is really, I think it's really special.
But the family's way of life is under threat. 75% of East Palo Alto's affordable housing stock, where annual rent increases are capped at 2%, is now owned by one landlord, Equity Residential, who bought it in December 2011. The City Council's noted that within 6 months, EQR went from sending 14 to sending 300 eviction notices to residents who'd missed their rent payment deadlines by a single day, giving them 72 hours to pay up or get out. Munguia Brown has won 2 eviction cases in court. She says EQR failed to complete even basic maintenance on her home.
There's quite a bit of mold. I didn't have ability to lock my window, my bathroom window, and there's always this infestation of cockroaches.
Many Woodland Park residents have complained of substandard living conditions, but coming from overseas, they often don't know their legal rights or speak fluent English. Some fear deportation. According to housing attorney Daniel Saver, California's legal regime means it's in landlords' interest to push out people living in rent-controlled properties.
When they get new tenants, they're able to raise the rent to market rate. And so if you have a tenant who's lived there for 5 or 6 years under rent control, their rent right now is probably about $500 or $600 below market every month. So if the landlord is able to get that person out, they're able to recuperate the costs, the administrative costs of actually going through an eviction within probably 1 to 2 months, and then start multiplying the profit that they're able to make off of that particular unit.
East Palo Alto, where African Americans and Hispanics settled after World War II, has a history of minority activism. It incorporated as a city in the early 1980s to have a say in its own governance. Former Mayor Ruben Abrika led that campaign. He says the city is still determined to fight what he calls predator corporations, which put profit before people.
For a small community, that's very devastating when that happens, because families now have to uproot their children, they have to leave their schools, they might have to move farther away, still keep their jobs here, which then is going to add additional cost to their already difficult economic situation.
The council must consider whether to extend a construction moratorium set to expire in November that currently ensures no Woodland Park home can be demolished. Equity Residential says it's managing its property in complete compliance with rent control requirements and that it issues late payment, not eviction notices. But Giovanni Munguia Brown argues homelessness is a real possibility every single month and vows she and her neighbours will battle on.
We have found the validity in our voice and the power in that. The commonality we have is our fight to to live rather than survive day to day.
East Palo Alto is the last haven of affordable housing in Silicon Valley. When people are displaced from here, there's nowhere local to the region for them to go, and as a result, they're forced to start over somewhere completely new. But this is also a community that's fiercely proud of its identity, and with residents increasingly willing to stand up and fight for their rights, they might just be able to slow down, if not halt, that displacement process. Rebecca Bowering, Telesur, East Palo Alto, California.
The reality of the real estate market in Richmond, California is threatening local mortgage owners, as the economic crisis brought with it the devaluation of property prices. But an initiative called Eminent Domain could be an option for those affected and a way to protect their investment.
In Richmond, California, nearly half the homes are worth much less than their mortgage. In order to avoid abandonment of homes, more foreclosures, urban blight, and loss of tax revenue, the city has proposed a controversial strategy of buying back these underwater mortgages at fair market value using eminent domain.
Eminent domain has been used as a tool by which municipalities would claim land for a greater public good. The real issue is how this housing crisis has devastated neighborhoods. Your eyes do not deceive you. You can drive through some of our neighborhoods, you can drive through neighborhoods throughout California and certainly the United States, and you can see what it's done to neighborhoods. And it's extremely unfortunate.
The result of this crisis, we are seeing some communities that are ghost towns. The middle class is being squeezed here in Northern California and some other high-cost parts of the country. At the height of the crisis, it was really exemplified in part by gigantically large foreclosure numbers. So we were looking at about 1 million foreclosures nationally in 2006, about 1.1, 1.2 in 2007, 2 million in 2008, 3 million or so in 2009. We have an imbalance in our housing system and not enough controls in place to protect people. Investors are swooping in and buying up foreclosed on properties by the hundreds and by the thousands. Rents are skyrocketing across the Bay Area. In many of our other communities, rural communities, communities of color, values are still down, and that leaves people trapped. And then when a mortgage servicer won't work with you to keep your home, what do? You lose it. We have a very complex situation happening here, and it's not just in the Bay Area. So I think Richmond is trying to avert all of this by saying, hey, let's keep it simple. Let's keep our existing homeowners where they are. Let's keep neighborhoods stable. And let's pay the investors whatever the fair market value is for these properties right now. And this is the first time I've seen a proposed use of eminent domain that's about stabilizing a neighborhood, stabilizing communities. That is brilliant.
This hasn't been done any place in the United States, and we will see what the future has in store.
That's all from US Today. I'm Karina Cartagena. Thank you for being with us.